All right. Assalamu alaikum, Imam Khalid. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. And you?
Alhamdulillah. No complaints. I wanted to um, kind of remind myself and you and all of us one of the reasons why we started this program, and that was primarily because your generation of African American Muslims, African American Imams, who came up around the same time as you. Um, there's a sense of urgency in capturing your stories and your experiences because it's just about every day we learn of the tragic news that Allah has called another, tremendous brother or sister back to Him, and with him or her, all of those experiences and all those lessons go with them. And recently, we were our community is mourning the loss of Imam Ayub from New York, and had a couple video testimonials and things like that about him. Just people talking about him, so that we can reflect a little bit about his life. And I know you had some experiences with him. Do you want to say a few words before I play that video?
I'm looking forward to seeing the video. Imam Ayub Baki was a tremendous force in New York City. I met him back in about 1995 when I was spending about half of each month in New York. Imam Baki had a Dawah center that was very close to the headquarters for ICNA at that particular time. And so it's someone that I knew personally. I've admired him and his work, his consistency over the years. And it's a tremendous loss to the Muslim community and to the overall community.
Let me go ahead and play this.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh. My name is Dr. Imam Abdul Salam Musa. I was a very dear friend of our beloved Imam Ayub Baki, who returned to Allah. He was a famous African American Da'i. He was my Imam in Queens. We were supposed to give my janazah, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, I talked with him Sunday morning or Monday morning, I don't remember when, but alhamdulillah, the brother has received an invitation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we will all receive. He's been known to give shahadas throughout the greater New York area and around our country. He's one of the famous imams that he gave shahada to was Imam Abdul Malik, Muhammad Abdul Malik. Um, he was my beloved younger brother. I love his family. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannah Firdaus. I'm sure that he'll be able to answer the questions that he needs to answer, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Brother Azim Khan, originally from New York City, now residing in Jersey. Just wanted to say some words about our Imam Ayub Abdul Baki, Rahimullah, from Jamaica, Queens, New York. Just some quick words. He was, mashallah, wonderful, strong Imam, strong voice. You both had a presence, a physical presence of strength that he exuded, both in his voice and his stature, and in his commitment, more so than everything else. He said to one of the brothers that his goal was to give 1 million shahadas. SubhanAllah, one of our imams from New York, Imam Abdul Malik, who is well known, he actually said that he took his shahada from Imam Ayub Abdul Baki, SubhanAllah. So, and there's many, people like that who took shahada through him. He ran a small organization called the Tawheed Center, and it was well known that that was a place where young reverts could go and spend time and learn about their deen, and also be taken care of, and that was like before third spaces were a thing, where he was doing that at a grassroots level. Also, one of the very vivid images I have of Imam Ayub are after the shooting, the NYPD shooting of Sean Bell on the night before his wedding. He was shot, over 40 times, I believe 41 times. And the next day, I remember I was working at the Marcas in Jamaica, and I walked by the 107th precinct, and you had very angry protesters that were standing face to face with cops in riot gear, and it was extremely tense situation. You could like cut the tension with a knife. And then there was a march, like basically protest that happened down 89th Avenue, and right in front of the Marcas, I saw, who did we see leading the charge in front of the entire crowd? It was no one but Imam Ayub, with his fist raised in the air, protesting, calling all the Muslims, come on, join us. You know, we have to stand up for justice. You know, no matter what the circumstance of where this shooting took place or what it might be, it's a matter of injustice. So whenever anything was happening, he would always be in the mix. He was always on the front lines, and he's always setting that example for the community. So that's just, something I want to share. And also his sons, mashallah, Muhyiddin, Abdul Baqi, very close, in my heart. Not physically these days, but he, subhanAllah, was one of the brothers, Brother Amar Al-Adam, or aka Amar Shukri from Al-Maghrib. He was saying, when he saw this father and son, he saw an example of strength that they projected, and that was the first time he saw that in the community. And I would, attest to that as well. SubhanAllah, got to speak to Muhyiddin, and you could hear the contentment in his voice. And he said, Alhamdulillah, this is Allah's will, and he's very strong. So subhanAllah, may Allah bless them, may Allah bless the family, and may Allah enable us to carry on that same legacy. And may Allah give us that opportunity that the African American imams who rose up out of the ashes of the civil rights movement, who really led our Muslim community, may Allah give us the potential to again raise another generation of leaders like that, who were real, down to earth, and could galvanize the people. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was asked to speak about the legacy of our Imam, one of our leaders, one of our Imams, Ayub Abdul Baqi. For anyone who knew him, who had the mercy of Allah to meet him in person, to learn from him, to sit in his presence, to laugh with him, to be active in the community with him, to struggle with him. Anyone and everyone like this, they knew that he was someone who was respect worthy, that he was admiration worthy. It was always justified to respect him. It was always justified to admire him, to respect him and admire him for the work and the sacrifices that he put forth for not just the benefit of the Muslims, but the benefit of human beings in general. He is someone whose memory and legacy is irreplaceable. There will never be another Ayub Abdul Baqi. However, at the same time, we hope that Allah will bless us who were amongst him to continue to learn from him and to carry on his legacy of service.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, I just want to share a few words about our beloved Imam Ayub Baqi. May Allah have mercy on him, forgive him, and grant him the highest of Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Still kind of weird just thinking about it and realizing that the Imam is no longer with us. He truly was somebody who was an under the radar Imam, right? And there's two aspects to that. The first being his, him just not really wanting to be in the spotlight and just doing the work, right, behind the scenes, whether that's never refusing when asked to speak, at the local masjids here in Queens and in Brooklyn are coming to young Muslims when we ask them to speak to the youth on multiple occasions. And the second aspect of it is his dawah work, which was really how you describe and how it fits to him being under the radar, where he was truly working behind the scenes constantly, daily, to get people and call people to Islam. And on multiple occasions, he has shared that a goal of his was to get 1 million shahadas. And only Allah knows, what that number ended up being as he passed. But to put things into perspective, one of the young brothers from young Muslims who was introduced to Imam when I first had him come speak to us back in 2015 about the legacy of our brother Malcolm X and how we can learn from that. This brother ended up becoming very interested in hearing more talks from Imam Ayyub and spending time with him. But it was to a point where he actually didn't know his name. So the way he used to refer to him as to me was that Imam who always gives, who whenever he gives khutbah, is also giving a shahada. SubhanAllah, right? To just put things in perspective on how, he is referred to as by the youth. And it's really a testament to him and the work that he's done in the community. When I became, or when I was asked to take on, responsibility for the Young Muslims chapter here in Queens years ago, I went to Imam Ayyub for some advice, and I asked him, just advice on just dealing with the Muslim youth in general, especially in that area. And subhanAllah, his advice was so simple. He said, just be friends with them. And it's something that, again, so simple, but it means so much. And it's a great way to just describe Imam Ayyub. He was truly somebody who was friends with everybody he interacted with. Whether it was the youth or the elderly in the community, everybody really enjoyed his presence. And he had a way of being very articulate in his talks where the messaging would really get to you, right? And whether it was his khutbahs or just his regular talks with the youth, you always left there feeling a certain, like an iman rush, because of his way with words. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward him for that and the impact that he's had on the community. Again, this is a loss that is really cannot be put into words. It's going to affect our community for a long time when you think about the impact that he's had. And while we acknowledge that, we also acknowledge that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree, right? We all will return one day. And Imam Siraj said it best as he led the janazah of Imam Ayyub last week, that, think about your last deeds, right? And how that's going to be how we're raised upon on the day of judgment, and the impact that those deeds have on us. And he associated that with Imam Ayyub, and again, what he's been doing for as long as we can remember in terms of his dawah work. The last time I met Imam Ayyub was actually about a month ago. And he was a very good friend, very dear to my father. May Allah have mercy on him. And every time I've seen him since my father's passing, he always mentions how much my father meant to him, and makes a dua for him. And he did the same exact thing the last time I saw him. He asked about my family and my mother and asked how she was doing as well. And, it's amazing. It's very... it hits hard just knowing like that was my last interaction with him. He was very dear to my father. He never refused when my father had asked him to come to Brooklyn to speak to our community and our local masjid there. And again, he touched everybody, and very deeply with his words. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward him, forgive him for his sins, and allow all of those deeds, those good deeds, to be heavy on his scale on the day of judgment, and multiply that. And we're all witnesses to the person Imam Ayyub was and the impact that he's had on the legacy. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him the highest judgment for those. Assalamu alaikum.
I'm here primarily to support the Rohingyan people who currently are voiceless. And in that respect, as a Muslim, if they cannot speak for themselves, I must speak for them, inshallah ta'ala. because we are brothers in faith, but even more so because of the fact that this is a human rights tragedy right before our eyes. Currently, there are 3 million people impoverished in New York City. We ask why. Why we have money for wars? Why we have no money for housing? Why we have money for war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we have no money for the people who need jobs, for the people who need housing, people who need education, from the elderly who are suffering. They want to cut back from Social Security, but they don't want to cut back from their salaries by paying their fair share of taxes. But he challenged me. He said, brother, I ain't gonna tell you my junior name, but you know, he said, you know, I'm gonna tell you, you have a concern for your people, and you seem to be genuine in the way you're thinking. He said, have you ever read anything about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? I said, no, I didn't read anything about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I challenge you, and he gave me the book, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rahmatul lil Alameen, a mercy to all of mankind. And I took the book, and I was a prolific reader. I'm losing my eyesight now, but I read the book, and I began to cry. And I said to myself, why am I crying? Why am I crying? Because when I'm looking, there's this man named Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, whom Allah Azza wa Jalla offered him the treasures of the heavens and the earth. And he said, I don't want none of it. All I want to be is with you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when he died, there was nothing in his hands. Nothing that his children could inherit. His wives, they went on. His children, they went on. And he went into the grave. But every time that he invoked a dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his dua. So had he wanted to have the riches to be like the orange man, he could have been there. He didn't want none of it.
So had to find just a few, clips that we could see of him, and I felt that, especially him talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talking about the grave, I felt that was very appropriate for this particular discussion, so that we could appreciate the diversity of his contributions to the community. But Imam Khalid, I wanted to ask you if you could share with us. I know that you knew it, Imam Ayub. Maybe you could tell us about when you met him and how your relationship developed over the years.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I met Imam Ayub, and I had forgotten the name of that Dawah Center. It was the Tawheed Center. And his Dawah Center was very close to the offices of the headquarters of the Islamic Circle of North America. At that particular time, I was there in New York editing Message Magazine, the magazine for ICNA. And I used to see Imam Ayub in Salah. This is when I first noticed him and started paying attention to him. And he would come to El Marcus, the headquarters of ICNA. I would see him at Juma. I would see him at other occasions, not consistently at Juma, because he would be all over the place. But I asked one of the brothers about him, and I can't remember exactly who it was who took me there first. It may have been the first brother that was given a testimonial, Dr. Abdul Salam Musa. I really believe that it was Dr. Abdul Salam that took me around the corner, a few corners to the Tawheed Center. And I was, from the very first time I had a conversation with him, I could feel the sincerity about Islam that he had in his heart. And we had a discussion, a fairly lengthy discussion in this first conversation about the relationship that the brothers who may not have been born in this country, the kinds of relationships or lack of relationships that they had with the African American Muslim community. And he said, I remember his saying to me that he understood Islam to be a universal faith and not just populated by people of different races and nationalities and ethnicities, but we were one ummah. And he talked to me a lot about that. And after that first encounter, I found myself, whenever I had the opportunity, going around to his center to see if he was there. Sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't. The times that he was not there, he was out doing some dawah work, or he was out speaking somewhere. He was involved in protest movements. Very, he was just a brother that I would say that one of the things that I admire about Imam Baki was his consistency. That he was not a sprinter when it came to doing Islamic work. He worked on behalf of the overall community of Muslims and non-Muslims. He worked on behalf of oppressed people in general. Of course, he was an imam, and his first responsibility, of course, is to the Muslim community, but he did not stop there. And it's something that, without consciously saying, I want to be like Imam Abdul Baki, I have tried to find examples in the community of first of consistency, because from the time we embrace Islam, from the time we are conscious or committed to the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are not in a sprint, we're in a marathon, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how long this lifelong marathon will be for any of us. And I admire people like Imam Ayub, because he had that long distance gene within his body for Islam. And I had heard in recent, beginning in maybe a couple of years ago now, I started hearing that he was not in very good health. But by the same token, I would hear that Imam Baki is in the hospital, make dua for him. But then shortly after that, I would see where Imam Baki is speaking somewhere, or he's out giving shahadas. He's, he had that he had the gene for consistency. It kind of, the way he did Islamic work, it kind of reminded me of another brother who I admired in that way, and for many other reasons, Dr. Suleiman Yang, who was a professor at Howard University, but he was known across the country. And Dr. Yang and Imam Ayub were very similar in that I would hear these stories about make dua for Dr. Yang. He's on his deathbed, he's in the hospital, he's in ICU. And then I may go to be at a conference somewhere, and who do I see there up on the stage speaking? He would get out of the hospital bed, it seems, and just go and continue his work. And this is what I admire so much about Imam Ayub as well. His illness did not stop him from taking this work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and working for his cause. It didn't stop him from continuing all the way up to the very end.
I smirked a little bit when you mentioned Dr. Suleiman Yang, because I was actually going to message you earlier today. I was listening to his Islam in History playlist just a few hours ago.
Oh,
That
wow.
man was certainly mashallah. I mean, he also was one of those people. He was a brilliant academic who could talk about, seemed like, any topic.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think it was in about 1979 or 1980. I had organized a Malcolm X conference in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on the campus of Winston-Salem State University there. And I had invited Dr. Yang as one of the speakers. And so he came down from DC. And when I saw him coming into the auditorium, he was walking with a very pronounced limp. And when I had the opportunity to speak with him, he had said that he had had this debilitating gout in his leg, and it was just painful every step that he would take. He said that he felt the pain, but the pain was only just baraka for him. He felt that the more he endured to carry out this message, the more blessings that he would get. And I was just inspired by Dr. Yang on so many different levels. He was somebody who every time I ran across him, he was telling me, Brother Khalid, are you writing? You have to write, brother. You can't just talk. You have to write. You have to put it down. Yeah.
Mashallah. I wanted to ask you about the dawah. It's very interesting that you, as well as a few of the brothers, Azim, they emphasized not just Imam Ayyub's street dawah or his dawah, but also that center. And I wanted to ask you about that strategy. I know that a lot of dawah organizations or dawah groups, they try to go to the park and set up a table where you give dawah, and you may get 5 or 6 people to embrace Islam, and you can follow up with them. But when you go into a community and you establish a center of some sort, whether that's a community center or a full-on masjid, Islamic center, maybe a library or something like that, and then you start giving dawah to the community around there, it's like the people know where to find you. It's not like once a week I can find these people at the park or just at these events, but I know exactly where to go to find them. So now that I'm a Muslim, this is going to be the place that I go to. From a organized dawah perspective, what's your take on that? How should we as Muslims approach that?
I'm a little prejudiced in my attitude about that because I'm a firm believer, and it wasn't just me, but I think it was the experience of those who embraced Islam in the late 60s and the early 70s and throughout the 70s, that our masjids would be located not out away from the people or in the well-to-do neighborhoods and on the fringes of these communities, but oftentimes we would deliberately locate our operations in the so-called hood. And this was very deliberate. As you said, that it wasn't just in a perfunctory kind of manner, just thinking there's something I have to do, that I'm a Muslim, I'm supposed to give dawah. So let me try to capture as many people as I can on one shot. Let me go to this park, there's something going on, and we talk to people or these kinds of things. But having the access to be able to set an example for those in the communities that you are calling to Islam. Imam Siraj this morning at about 7 o'clock sent me a video of the sports talking head, Stephen A. Smith. He's probably right now one of the most popular. He doesn't, well, he's a very popular sports announcer, not so much an announcer, but a sports analyst. And he has his own show on ESPN, and he's probably the most high-profile person on that network. And Imam Siraj sent me this video this morning, and it was Stephen A. Smith saying that he had never in his life had he smoked reefer, he had never in his life drank alcohol, he had never gotten high deliberately off of anything. And he said the reason why I didn't do any of these things was because Muslims were around me all the time. He grew up in Hollis, Queens in New York. And he said there were Muslims around me all the time. And because of their presence, and I may be editorializing just a little bit, but because of their presence, I saw what it meant to be stand-up men, and that you didn't need to do these things to fulfill your role and responsibilities as a Black man. And so this is the kind of example of being in these communities, whether a person that day that you talk to them about Islam, or what, maybe 10 years later, but not just being there, it's just the example that individuals see with your very presence. They recognize that you're in this environment, and particularly if you happen to live, you know, anywhere in the environment. And at that particular time, we understood that we wanted to try to live as close around the masjid as we possibly could. So, you know, there were so many pockets of Muslims around the just overall masjid. And so that presence is absolutely essential if we want to do more than just preach to people. You know, people learn by what they see more than what they hear. We can talk to people all day, but when they see you, especially in the environment in which they live, and addressing the issues of that particular community and trying to help empower those residents in those communities, it has, in my humble opinion, it has a much more long lasting, makes a more long lasting impact on the people that you are trying to spread the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to.
And that's very interesting. I didn't know that about Stephen A. Smith, though it makes complete sense. Um, and I think that's just another benefit of when you go into the community, and when you're investing in the community, you know, by building something there. And so now you have a vested interest in going there and being there in that community. But then also, like you said, just being a positive impact on the community, not like I'm coming from the outside and I'm here to help you like a savior, but simply by embodying the Islamic values, which are the proper values for a human being, appreciated by all communities. One thing that I've also noticed is, you know, going into some of these like inner city type areas, is that the people in the community have a very keen sense of knowing whether or not you're sincere, whether you're here just to, I've been in certain situations where people are giving away backpacks or stuff like that, but really they're more concerned with taking pictures and stuff like that, you know. And I'm looking at the faces in the community, and they instantly know that they're being played, right, basically.
Right.
And what you're saying about being that kind of role model in the community, I've noticed that even as Muslims here in Dallas or in Houston, when we go, not the first time, not the second time, the third time, the people start recognizing us. I've literally seen these young men, you don't even have to give them dawah. They come up to you and say, what is this all about? Can I pray with you? Can I make salah with you? But I think that it's a no-brainer that we have to do this, and we certainly have the resources. I think what's really missing, though, is the motivation. I honestly feel, and I hope I'm wrong, I feel like the suburban Muslim community almost doesn't see the value in that. You know, I'll give you this argument. Perhaps you can respond to it, right? And this is not my argument. I got it from someone else, right? They said
I hope
that.
so.
You know who? I think you know who it is, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
tell you the name. But
Right.
but basically, the essence of what they said was, look, when people in lower socioeconomic classes, they're going to embrace Islam because it's they have nothing to lose. But the real challenge is getting those who who are already affluent, who already have privileges. Getting those people to embrace Islam is the real thing. And the example is also given that, look at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, people like Bilal and Khabbab radiallahu anhuma. I mean, they're courageous people, but they had everything to gain by becoming Muslim. Whereas you look at people like Uthman ibn Affan and some of the people who came from well-to-do families, what did they have to gain from a worldly perspective? You know, and I'm not sure that they were dismissing or insulting the Sahaba who came from the companions who came from lower socioeconomic classes, but I almost felt like, I know there's a response to this. I know you're wrong, but is it even worth responding to you? So can you
Good brother.
contextualize this? You've got
Yeah.
the Qur'an, you've got the Sunnah. Give us,
Yeah.
what's the response to that?
Yeah. It's an unfortunate attitude that many of our brothers who and sisters who have attained a degree of material success in this environment here in the United States, from their vantage point, um, we are the ones. It will be those who have the most. They are the privileged class would be the ones who will carry the banner of Islam in this particular country and here in the United States. And it's a kind of unfortunate misreading of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's very unfortunate that the idea, when you look at that methodology of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when you look at the youth who were the early converts to Islam, the roles that they played in the history and development in that first Islamic movement, and afterwards in carrying this message in a way that we can look back on this period of Islamic history and say, and just have thousands of companions. And I guarantee you that those thousands of Sahaba that we recite their stories, and we learn so much from their stories, that the overwhelming majority were not in the financial or economic class as Uthman ibn Affan. They were not in those upper echelon. Uh, the beauty of Islam, as I understand it, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has given us a perfect formula of how to bridge the gap, to bring those who at one point were may have even been despised because of their condition in the society, but to bring those and create a genuine kind of brotherhood, not just like race relations discussions between black folks and white folks, and you're trying to say, "Wow, you calling me this," and this kind of thing. Not like that, but Allah brings the hearts together when we understand what Islam is truly about. And so it's, to me, it's just an unfortunate vantage point. It's an unfortunate prism to look at society in today's context and think that there's so little value of people in the society. What the rich in American society, Muslim and non-Muslim, have to gain from this, it may not be their economic freedom, because they are already, Allah has already blessed them with economic stability. But when we truly understand Islam, it liberates the mind, it liberates the heart. And as long as we are looking through the lens of, in this context, of the capitalistic society, and equating value based on material possessions and resources, and what is your status, what do you do as a job, and these kinds of things, as long as we are evaluating the value of human beings based on these materialistic standards, then we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark. And oftentimes I think that this is one of the failures of the Muslim Ummah in this part of the world, that America has waved the flag of come here and all of your dreams will be realized. And I think that many of our Muslim brothers, whether they were born in America or not, have fallen victim to this kind of evaluation of the worth of people, that if I can make it, then you can make it. And the circumstances are just so very so very different. You know, it kind of irks me. It's not doesn't kind of irks me. You know, I've learned to be patient, more patient over the years. I didn't have this kind of patience when I was younger, but it irks me to hear people talk about, in particular, why can't Black folks with all of these opportunities here in this country, why can't they get it like we got it? It just reflects a complete ignorance of the social hurdles and the social structure of anti-Black racism in this country and white supremacy. And we cannot effectively apply the instruments that Allah has given us in Islam as a problem solving vehicle if we don't understand the context and where we are and how did things get this way, and what are the underlying factors and features of this environment that we're living in here today, right now. But we just have to, you know, get out of ourselves a little, get out of our own way a little bit more than what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, the main thing is that I believe that it's a lot more convenient if the mass of the Muslim community that's living in the suburbs, it's a lot more convenient to focus on, if dawah is a priority, focus on dawah in that community, because going into impoverished areas is not an easy job. It's a very tough job because essentially your job is more than dawah. I mean, any active Muslim Islamic center that I've seen in these communities, anyone who's giving dawah, effective dawah, is not just going out into the streets and speaking. You have to earn the people's attention, and also you have to tend to the needs of the people. And that's a very tough job because it's not just about going and handing out meals. It's about actually helping people overcome certain problems. And I think it's anyone who wants to know, anyone who's genuine knows that there's major differences. I've been to schools in those types of areas, and I've been to schools in nicer parts of town. I mean, there's just night and day the amount of resources and opportunities that you have. And those are the opportunities they don't have over there. And those are the types of things that we as Muslims need to be doing, and not making our Islam a condition, because Allah is so merciful that He softens the hearts of the people. And that is just as important for us, that we need to do acts of service with no strings attached in those communities, and that will naturally, the dawah becomes so easy where the people now, because their heart becomes softened and they come to you asking about Islam, and they already have, like that Stephen A. Smith story, like he admired Muslims, and that's what happens here. So it's I honestly feel like if we can be a little patient with our brothers and sisters who may have these preconceived notions, I feel that if a few people can take the lead and kind of create this wave, I do feel like it's going to be a domino effect. When people start seeing, the beauty of the deen spreading in that part of town, I feel like that's when these stereotypes will fall apart. And I think that that's what some of these young brothers were alluding to, who were talking about Imam Ayub, that praying for the next generation, to produce that, because I truly feel that it's going to be a domino effect. Pretty soon people are going to watch this recording and be like, what, when were the Muslims like that? Just because I think it's such low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, yeah. It's very important, I think, that we don't bring preconceived attitudes about the people who are living in kind of deprived conditions. That we think that it's a function of an intellectual deficiency, that the people who
Yeah.
are living like this are not capable of achieving certain standards. And I mean, it's the garbage that has been packaged for us in this country. And again, using that reference, it's low hanging fruit. It's very easy to say that the people, it's not worth actually trying to fish in those particular ponds, because the what you pull out is not going to be tasty. It's not going to be valuable. So don't waste your time. And this is an absolute, it's wrong to have these kind of stereotypes, but it also impedes our capacity to influence others. Everyone is not going to take Shahada, but look at Abu Talib. Look at the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's uncle and the role that he played in protecting the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and the role that he played in by his protection helped to advance this movement that he admired but never became a part of. Now, what happens with Abu Talib is between he and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for all the help he did to you in protection, this is what is going to happen to him. But that's with Allah. But in this world, those folks, we can form allies. We people like Stephen A. Smith, and I'll send that to you when we get off air here. People like Stephen A. Smith are influence leaders. Maybe unfortunately or fortunately, but he influences a number of people. And so that means a lot to people, that every morning they're watching these sports talking heads, and they're so engrossed and captured by sporting events. And to hear someone like Stephen A. Smith talk about his own upbringing there in New York and the positivity that he saw with the Muslims, that word from him, Allah is using him to do, I won't call it dawah, but to help influence others about Muslims. And so everybody doesn't have to be a Muslim. We shouldn't go into communities thinking that unless we have X number of shahadas to come out of these communities, it's not worth our time. This is faulty kind of logic that we need to dispel and disabuse ourselves of this kind of thinking. But unfortunately, I do believe that much of this kind of thinking comes from just not thinking. It's just ingesting all of the garbage that is floating around to justify the way that people of African descent and Latinos, Hispanic people are treated in this country. You dehumanize them, you take away their human value, and so you're justified now in treating them and locking them up and treating them like animals, and this kind of thing once they're locked up.
Yeah, I hope that Imam Siraj reaches out to Stephen A. Try to give him that give him dawah. Inshallah,
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
pray for him that Allah guides him. I mean, he would
I
be
mean,
legendary on the minbar. I mean,
right,
I
right,
would
right.
I would
That's right,
fly out to listen to his khutbah.
right. That's right. That's right.
I did want to ask you on the topic of strategy, kind of, so we can rely on, or so we can benefit from your experiences in Dawah over the last 50 years. You have stated in the past that it is very imperative for when you are an organized Dawah group to be in uniform, right? Or
Mhm,
adhere to some sort of a common dress code.
mhm.
What do you still believe in that in the current context, and what's the rationale behind that?
Because it proved to be such an effective strategy in being in the community and giving dawah, or even providing services to the people. It helps your identification. People can immediately identify who you are based on the way that you dress. Look at the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah uh, informed the Prophet And the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, from being informed by Allah, he told the Sahaba to distinguish yourself in dress. And so he didn't go and adopt some dress code that was foreign to the environment there. He modified the dress code that everyone else was wearing, that others were wearing, but he had this little thing with his turban that he said, let the tail of the turban hang down your back between your shoulder blades, not all the way down to your behind, but between your shoulder blades. And so obviously the other people, other Arabs in that area, and the Arabs were not wrapping their turbans like this. So this was something different. So when someone saw that turban tail hanging between the shoulder blades, they immediately identified that person as a Muslim. And so I think the same psychology is at play today. I know it was a very effective mechanism during my years of being in the Islamic Party in North America, when we would dress in a manner that didn't separate us from those that we were giving dawah to, because our dress code was so radically different from what they knew. But the uniformity itself garnered and the attention of the people. And it gave the impression that no matter what numbers you had, it just seemed like y'all were everywhere. Man, you may have 10 people in an area, but because you're all dressed in a very similar fashion, and we went as far as to be color coded. Everyone had a specific color on that they were wearing. The kufis were the same color, the pants were the same color, the tops we were wearing were the same color. And it actually, and this was so different from the basic lack of uniformity that you see in the community. Now, those who have what I would characterize as antisocial agendas, like members of gangs, they understand this phenomena as well, that they fly certain colors, they wear certain colors to identify themselves as to who they are. So when you see a person dressed in a certain way, in a certain color, you automatically assume that this person is with this particular group or with that particular group. And so it's has proved to be an effective way of maximizing your presence in the community. People come through neighborhoods selling stuff, and it's just something about human psychology that we appreciate the ease in which we can identify people. It's like the same thing with people working in stores, like fast food joints or different kinds. There's a standard dress that that somebody from an opposing company is not trying to sell you some junk to get you to turn off, from the product that's been sold here. So, but just in the context of dawah, I believe then and I believe today that this can be an effective method of being identified in the community.
It's very valuable information, and as we develop Mabel Muslim Alliance for Black Lives into these organized community empowerment efforts and dawah efforts, I think that was something that I had written down. That I feel like that's something that we need to, come up with a solid dress code so that when we go into the community, we can be effective in that manner.
Yeah.
So always good to learn from your. I mean, that's why you went through all these experiences so that you could share it with us, so that we don't have to go through the same learning pains and things like that.
Right. Yeah, some things change, but some things remain the same.
I mean, the examples you gave, gangbangers and fast food joints, I mean,
Right.
it all makes perfect sense because they still do
Right.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
still got
Yeah.
their colors.
Yeah. They have their
So,
colors. Yeah. They have their colors.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, we've covered a wide range of topics today, and Maghrib keeps creeping back a little bit, so
Yes,
Maghrib has come in. But
right.
I just wanted to, before we close out, I know we mentioned a few people, as we do every week, people who have passed, who Allah has called back. So just wanted to close out by, we pray that Allah accepts all of those people, and all the efforts that they did, and may Allah have mercy upon all of them. And especially today, we're thinking about Imam Ayub, and we ask that Allah grants him Jannah, and that all of his efforts, all the people that he gave dawah to who embraced Islam, we ask that Allah accepts all their deeds, as multiply and give him a copy as well. And we ask that Allah
Ameen.
gives sabr to his family. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.